So Tony and I, we've gone to elementary through college together, and I was always involved in his sports since
Yeah.
because it was always a rivalry between the Long Beach Cubs and the St. Mark Lambs, which my brother was on. And we always, and how, I remember his dad always sitting on the sideline. My brother was a catcher, and he would say, Tony, run, Tony, he can't throw you out. I said, yes, he can, yes, he can. And the one time my brother threw him out, I just looked over at Mr. Gwynn and just licked my tongue. When I think about the stuff I did back then, and it was kind of a rivalry. So we really were always kind of like neighbors, and we'd kind of walk to school together sometime because back then, we really walked to school. I think it was probably not, about a mile to school or so, but. Um, I started dating Tony in high school, and that's where, everything began. I always ran track, and he was baseball, basketball player. And so I remember the day we really started talking, and we had this bet going. And I said, okay, let's race. Okay, I will do exactly what you want me to do if you beat me. And I remember I gave him 10 yards. I was in my socks, and we started racing, and I beat him. So that was
Wow.
like the beginning of everything is when I learned to I started because we were baseball in Long Beach at that time. If you didn't play baseball, it was like you weren't it, and everybody played base. I was always the little leagues going on. And, when I started really talking to Tony in high school, and we were just really, really good friends because we were so competitive against each other. I would go in his backyard and we'd play basketball, and it was basketball sometime against Chris and Charles. And, you know, then I remember we'd always play baseball. Well, he would take the two top socks and cut it up into squares, and then wrap them up and round them off with rubber bands. And I remember Miss Gwen used to get so upset with him for cutting up his tube socks. But that's where I learned really about pitches and stuff like that, and how they would. He would teach me how to throw those called sock balls. So we play sock baseball, and sometimes we play against his two other brothers, and sometimes I would pitch to him too. And I remember I would always, he taught me so well how to throw those balls, those sock balls. And I would always say, here comes the sucker's pitch. And he would always swing and miss. And he would get so mad. Just pitch the ball loose. And I was like, so those are the things like we had a lot of fun growing up, and, watching them play basketball, and, going on to San Diego State, and if you let everybody tell it that I convinced him to go to San Diego State, but it wasn't true, because Mr. Gwynn, TCU was recruiting him at that time, and Mr. Gwynn wanted him to go to TCU, and all of a sudden everything changes, and he goes to San Diego State, and I'm the one that got blamed for it. But you know what? That's on the movie that the documentary that we produced. I'd have to send it to you to let you just watch it, and you see. But we had so much fun
What a
growing up
story.
playing sports, and how, he came to Tony always wanted to play two sports. And it was Fullerton that was recruiting him for basketball, and he wanted to play baseball. And Augie Garrido said, told him, Tony, this is a baseball is a full-time sport. And so he kind of changed his mind of going to Fullerton, and he would just want to find that school would allow him to play both sports. And we went to when he got to San Diego State, he sat down with Coach Beasy. Coach Beasy wouldn't let him play the first year, but then he kind of slipped on out into there the second year I remember the first time he went out there right off the from basketball. I think he went 5 for 6, you know.
Yeah.
And I will never forget Bobby Meacham, who played for the Yankees and got drafted #1. And he was like, "Hey, this you don't have this guy on your team. This is your best baseball player right here, you know." And for him to say that, because he was like the #1 guy, and we always played him in the Connie Mack League, you know, because during high school during the summer, you know, I traveled with Tony playing baseball, the Connie Mack leagues, and I was the scorekeeper. And I remember John Rambo, who was the coach of the Jets, Long Beach Jets, and he always wanted me to know what pitch they struck out on. I really had to learn how to really keep score for real. And that's like, that's when I learned that I really started enjoying it. I started getting into, you know, uh, Tony teaching me the fundamentals of hitting and stuff like that, and sometimes when we'd watch the videos and I would say certain things, he said, "You know what, Leash, I taught you too much, you know too much." And so, those are like really the fun times, and all through college, high school, college, and his professional sport, I was just really involved in his career because I really loved the game of baseball and so much that he taught me. So those were some of the great times. Even we'd go on the road and everybody's like, oh, most of some of the wives when they went, they would go shopping and stuff. Now, granted, I went shopping, but most of the time, after that game, we would sit and look at the videos,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah, you guys really
enjoyed.
pioneered that though too, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you were the one that was doing a lot of that work, I heard.
Yep. I'm the one that really came up with it. They call him Captain Video, but little Tony is tell you that my mom was the first one, and I
And was that common at
enjoyed.
the time? Was that common
No,
at the time? Were
it was
players watching
nobody
video?
knew. Everybody thought it was foreign when he started doing. He started looking at different videos, seeing what he's doing wrong. Because I remember the first time I started it, he was in. To him, it was a slump. Okay, and I remember he had
But by
gone
the way,
like,
what's a slump to him? Is that 300 or something? Like,
oh yeah, he was like 0 for 8. And
okay.
he was like, leash. I'm doing something wrong. And we were on the phone, and he's like saying, I gotta find out. And I said, you know what I could do? We were taping young Tony, because he was playing football, he was a little toddler. So we had bought him
Yeah.
a helmet and everything, and we were taping him. And then I said, you know what? I could tape your at bats, at that time I didn't really know how to work, how to slice and all that kind of stuff. I just knew how to push the button.
And by the
And I
way, it wasn't
remember,
easy. It wasn't like pulling out your phone and hitting record. It was a
yeah,
lot of work back then, and the
yeah.
equipment like wasn't everywhere.
Yeah, we had the Beta 8,
Yeah.
our Beta 8 tape, and then it was VHS, and all of a sudden we see all these tapes we have accumulated, but we started, and that was the first time I started taping this back. But then I just put record, and I would stop when he's finished batting, and then he was like, "Okay, I want you to hit record." And don't don't stop until they do the replay. He had all these rules and stuff. So I would like, okay, and he would come home and he would put all his hits on one tape, all his at bats on one tape. If he did all his home runs on bat, and of course he didn't hit that many, but he would have everything so organized, and from there it just flourished. And like I enjoyed sitting in the room watching him study the tapes, and there were certain pictures, and I remember the left-hander Jeff Faseo. Tony hated hitting against him because he called him what a cunning thumb right-hander, you know. And sometimes Jeff would get him, and he was one of the ones that I think struck Tony out a couple of times. But after that, he studied, so he like, I'm gonna get you, and And then he started doing pretty good. He did Jeff Cicero.
How much of what you guys were studying video was studying his swing and perfecting that versus studying the opponent and the pitcher to see how they threw? Was it equal? Was it a little more on him? Was it on the others?
You know what? At first, it was him, and then it became equal because, he would always, figure out a way. He would look at Greg Maddox. I remember he like, "Yeah, you're not gonna get me, Greg. You're not gonna get me." And he said, "Oh." He got a little he added something onto his pitch or something like that. He said, "Oh, the breaks a little bit harder now." He said, "That's all right. You're not gonna get me. You're not gonna get me, buddy." And I would laugh because when Tony would hit against him sometimes, and Greg looks at him like, "There's no way. I don't know how you hit that pitch." And it was so they had a little thing going on there, but it was always fun to me sitting in there studying. And then I was able when he called, he would say, Leash, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And I had a phrase. I said, when your booty's in the dugout, you know you're way out in front of that stuff. I said, get your booty out the dugout. And we would go back and forth. And I was like, you got to keep your hands back. So I became. It was able to know his swing as well as he did.
Insane. I mean, the studying there is great. Talking about Maddox for a second. And
Hmm.
so, for those that a lot of people know, but let's clarify for those that don't, Greg Maddox, maybe one of the smartest and most focused great pitchers of all time. Not with power, but with the way that he could place the ball anywhere, had the most variety of pitches. I mean, he's so intricate. He would intentionally give up a home run player to August because he would think he'd see them in October and give them the same pitch and strike them out. So he'd set them up months in advance. It was that science. So many strikeouts. How many times did he strike out Tony in a career?
I don't think Greg ever struck Tony. In fact, I
You're
know he didn't. And
you're right. He
I,
did
I
not.
was I was laughing because he would always give if Tony hit a pitch that he knew that he was gonna get him out on, and then he give him that look over at him like, I don't even know how you hit that pitch. You weren't supposed to hit that pitch. And it
And
was a
this isn't a
thing.
small number of at bats. This isn't like 5 at bats, 10 at bats. This is over 100 at bats. No
Yeah,
strikeouts against
yeah.
the greatest pitcher of that era, especially like this most strategic pitcher for
Yeah,
sure.
he was a finesse pitcher for sure.
Yeah.
He had an arsenal of pitches, and you didn't know what you was coming. But I know Tony always said, "I gotta stay balanced. I gotta keep my hands back with him." He said, "Cause he's sneaky, Leash. He's sneaky. He sneak a
Yeah.
pitch in on you that you didn't know he had. And that's how great a pitcher that he was. He could locate any place he wanted to. But he just never couldn't get the great Tony
And
Gwynn.
and do you know what Tony's average was against Greg?
Ooh,
About?
I want to say it was about 350. I'm not sure. I can't remember, but
Hold
I
on,
know it was
Alicia.
over. I was over 300.
429.
Oh.
So like for context of people that don't know baseball as much, like that's an impossible average to hit against anybody. Yet to hit that much against the greatest. The question I was going to ask you on that is, did he plan extra for did like he get excited facing Greg, right? Knowing how good he was, best in class. So it was kind of the best and the best. And I mean, the stats clearly show that Tony ended up winning the battle.
Oh yeah, let me tell you. He would always say, "Yeah, I'm facing Maddie tonight. He ain't gonna get me, Leash." And I remember he would study and study, and he would watch the game before Greg came to San Diego. He would study his pitches then. And he said, like that's when he know. Another pitch there. But you ain't gonna get me, Maddie. I promise you ain't gonna get me. And
It's
he studied harder when it came to Greg. And because he was saying he's so good, Leach, he's trying to sneak something in there on you. And he said, but he not gonna get me. He not gonna get me. Because I remember Tony called them the Marvelous Four. I think it was Maddox, Smoltz, and
yeah.
a couple of them are from the
Glavin. Yeah.
Braves, And
Tom Glavine.
yeah, and he would say, I know Glavin struck him out, And I remember when Glavin struck him out, he was so mad. Like he carried that. He came home and he would not talk. He said, I can't believe he got me. He got me, Lee. She got me. I was like, it just happens sometime. He said, no. He carried the first time Glavin struck out, he carried that with him for a long time. And
So
so
funny. What? Okay.
Glavin and Smoltz was the ones he really studied a lot with, studied more, you know, and I remember that. And, he would go and sit down, and he would like, I always teased him because he would always go to the ballpark so early. I said, "Oh,
Really?
you going to unlock the gates for them? Okay, I'll see you later."
It's
That's
insane.
how it was. Hmm.
But I think that shows how important preparation is, right? Because even going against the greatest, like you have to put in the work. And there's a great quote Greg Maddux had where he said, "Sometimes hitters can pick up differences in spin. They can identify pitches if there's different release points. But pitcher can change speeds. If a pitcher can change speeds, every hitter is helpless, limited by human vision, except for that blank Tony Gwynn."
Yeah.
So Maddox tried, and again, as smart as he gets, there's incredible like interviews with him. Maddox is the most interesting pitcher to me of all time, and the fact that Tony performed so well says, and not only against him, against that Braves, insane front of the '90s, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
but
it's
Tony loved him
ridiculous.
so much because he said, he's really a nice guy. He humble. He said, he never asked cocky. He said he know he could pitch. He know he could
Yeah,
pitch, and he don't need all that added stuff because he said, well, he's one of the greatest pitchers that I've ever faced.
insane. And the stats total against those three, I looked up Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz. Three total strikeouts in his career
Yep.
against those three
I
and
think Glavine
nearly
struck him out
300 at
twice,
bats.
and
Yep, you nailed
Smoke
it
struck him out once.
once. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the stats are just almost unhuman when you look at it, especially the way that the game is played today, which is what I think one really unique thing about Tony is that a lot of stats get broken. You see home run stats getting broken, right? Like you see
Mm-hmm.
everything is kind of up for grabs. I mean, we see 50-50 that like that's an insane stat of Otani, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think, oh, I mean, a lot of people think that these stats are just untouchable. The game has changed and evolved. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's almost inhuman. How was you got to witness him from the beginning? Was this, how much was, in your perspective, a God-given gift of Tony just being this incredible hitter versus the preparation, the work, time in? It's probably a combination of both. Like,
The
what would you
preparation
ever,
the preparation was so important. Listen, I remember sitting on the bazooka bucket on putting those balls on the tee, him swinging it at least 100 times, and I would be out
wow,
there like he would say, "Leash, you're not. Come on, moving too slow." And I'm like, "Look, I'm helping you." But I remember that he prepared all the time, and I remember some used to say, "You don't even need to do that. You were one of the best hitters." And he always told me, he said, "Leash, when you think you're too good and he said it's time for you to get out the game." And
it's
I
true.
laughed at him, but it didn't matter what anybody said. Even when he was on top of his game, he always went to the ballpark and made preparation. On the off season, I'm sitting on the bazooka bucket and bazooka bubblegum bucket, and I'm putting those wiffle balls on the tee. And he always did that. And I really watched him a lot because his thing was soft on the front foot, bring the knob of the bat to the ball and the barrel will follow. And he's always said you have to keep your batting stance, you have to be balanced. And and I always watched him, he's always balanced. He always kept his hand back, except when he was playing I used to say, "Oh, you playing pickle with the second baseman because you out in front, you just look terrible and your booty's in the dugout." So when your booty's in the dugout, you know you're not going good.
It's amazing. When did like, not only yourself, but those around him, when did you all know that no, he's going to be a pro? First off, a pro, and then I guess a great. Was that in high school, college? Did you not know until then, or was it kind of expected at that rate, right? Like,
No, see, everybody thinks that. Let me tell you, Tony, I remember him choosing baseball when he got drafted by the Clippers and San
which,
Diego
by the
on
way,
the set.
side note, that's an insane stat. People don't realize he was drafted in
Hmm.
basketball. Is you know how tough it is to make it in any sport. Drafted in
Yeah.
multiple sports. Insane. Go ahead, Alicia.
And I remember he said, you know, he had a plan, and in his mind he chose baseball for longevity. He
Yeah,
said, if I chose basketball, he said I might last a year, but I don't know, because he was actually a really good point guard, but he didn't think he was that great, but he actually was. But he knew that he wasn't real tall, and at that time it was, point
yeah,
guards was coming in there 6'9",
yeah,
and so I remember he said he chose baseball for the longevity, but he said, I'll probably play, the average years of baseball, and then I got to do something else. And I look back on it now, and he really thought he would never play no more than 10 years. He knew that he was good. I remember because when he got drafted, he was a good hitter, but his defense was a little sus.
yeah.
But I remember when you said something about Tony that he couldn't do it, he would always go work on it. And I remember he'd have Bobby Tolan come out even on the off season, hitting them grounders and fly balls, and he went and throwing to the base. He really worked hard on that, and I think that was his best feat for him, more than any batting titles, because everyone said that he wasn't a great defensive player. And I remember he worked hard, going out doing extra work on his own, even on the off season, So I remember that. So, you know, when I look back on you don't think about it then. I was like, this dude was really good. He was an incredible athlete, and there were things that still he could do even after he retired.
Yeah, and it's a great kind of segue into one of these items behind me, Gold Glove
Mm-hmm.
Awards, right?
Yep.
Because everybody obviously because Tony was such a good hitter, right? And baseball
Mm-hmm.
is a hitting sport. That's where the stats are measured. Defensive stats aren't as much. It really is phenomenal to think of how many players there were, and his defense was a question in the beginning. And the fact that he won multiple Gold Gloves is a testament, I think, to hard work paying off,
Yep.
right? And when you look at that, right, like it's really interesting. I think this story connects so many with fans, and it's interesting. Our last auction that we did, right, like the last Tony Gwynn Gold Glove set an all-time modern Gold Glove sale record for that, which was surprising to a lot of people because there's more people known for their defense than Tony. But I think people understanding the effort that goes into that
Mm-hmm.
really is impactful, and it's a metaphor for life, which is why I love these items, right? Because they represent more than a stat. They're these
Mm-hmm.
stories and also inspirational metaphors and things. But for this Gold Glove, 1990, what do you remember about the 1990 season?
The 1990 season was one of those seasons that he said, you know what? He said, I'm gonna show people about my defense. He said, oh, I'm gonna let them, and I said, let the smucks talk. He said, but I'm gonna show him. I remember him preparing himself, making preparation to do, because I think he had already won some, and he
Yeah,
was like, everybody thinks it's a fluke, but it ain't. But you know what? He really took pride in his effort of working hard to earn a
yeah,
gold glove, because, you go against some of them arms. He didn't have the strongest arm, but he had a very accurate arm. And I remember when we played the Mets, he threw out Daryl Strawberry, he threw out two people right back to back, because they, to them, they were scouting report, his arm was a little weak, but he was accurate. It wasn't the strongest arm, but very accurate arm.
and that's another metaphor, right? We just talked about two greats, not only Tony, right, and hitting, and he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the home run hitter that comes from power. It was that
Mm-hmm.
not striking out, doing the arguably more difficult thing. Same
Mm-hmm.
with Greg Maddux, right? He did not have the most powerful arm. His fastball was in the 80s, which is
Mm-hmm.
like he wouldn't have even been scouted for baseball today, like just
Mm-hmm.
looking at advanced metrics. But he was so good because of the accuracy, the knowledge. and
Mhm.
the dedication to being great. What was it that drove Tony, especially for so long, right? Because it's easy to get in there and have success, and you see a lot of players have success a season, a couple seasons, and it falls out. The longevity. I mean, how many Gold Gloves he won, silver bats, silver sluggers, leading the league in average. Like, what motivated him to keep going and to keep being great when you're already and get better when you're already at that level?
It was the love and the passion for the game. He had a real true love for baseball,
Yeah,
and so his passion for baseball was, I mean, off the charts. He
yeah,
loved baseball. He looked forward to baseball, but he also knew when it was time to hang up the shoes. He saw the young ones coming in. He said, I think it's time for me to move over and let these young guys shine. And
it's
that was him.
amazing.
He thought of all the young guys, the Gary Sheffields, all the Roberto Alomars, those guys he cherished in working with them, and he really he really valued what they did and respected what they did.
Yeah.
I remember when Gary he went to he got traded, and Tony would always follow him because he worked under Tony. And but I remember Tony said, what I'm most proud of him of, not so much I'm proud of him as his baseball, he said, but the father and the husband has that he has become. And that was,
Uh,
Tony was all about family. And I remember him saying that. He said he was already a great baseball player. He said, but most proud of him, of the father and the husband that he's become.
and speaking of that, I mean, Tony known as an all-time great guy. Beyond,
Hmm.
take away any of the statistics and things, the things that really matter. He's raised an amazing family. I mean, getting to know and work with you has been incredible over the past couple of years. And I've having a relationship with Tony Jr. over the years, always just he's never not smiling, right? And just known within circles is a great guy. So to raise generations of or to be around generations of family that's
Hmm.
like that. What obviously that's actually to you, what's that like, and how is that, how did you guys get through the challenge of Tony being one of the most popular figures in the world, right? Like that can easily get to somebody's head,
Hmm.
and I'm sure there's always moments, right? Like people aren't perfect, but how was he able to stay humble and also raise a family that's humble and not, again, you see, unfortunately, it's not always easy raising kids in those circumstances where they have the world, like literally could do anything, and to see them so humble and great. Like how did you guys and how did Tony
You
pull that
know,
off?
Tony, one thing he told me, he said, I might be good like everybody, and he said, but you know what? He said, I cherish and appreciate the fans. He said, I mean, San Diego was his home. He loved the fans. He said, you know what, Leash, these are the people who got me here. And he said, I will always
Yeah,
respect the fans of San Diego. He said, because they're part of my career. And he said, whenever you think that you're better than people, or just, he said, listen, I'm really average guy. I just happen to be blessed to play baseball a little bit better than others. He said, but at the end of the day, I'm a normal person. He said, and I always want the fans to look at me like I'm just a person just like them. And I said, okay, but that's who he was. When he would go, I remember they were always trying to get him security, and he was like, no, nope, I don't need all that. And he
it's
just wanted, he
amazing.
said, you know what, Leash? You know why I always tell the parents or to let their son come ask themselves? He said, because I want them to remember that moment that I was just a
Yeah,
normal guy who signed, gave them a signature. He said, I don't want them to think no more. He said, I don't want them to look at me as a star. He said, I want them to just look at me as normal Tony Gwynn. I said, yeah,
it's
but
amazing. I mean,
that's not going to happen. He said, no, but I want them to remember and cherish the moment.
what a human
Mhm.
being. It's just an incredible story all the way. When you met Tony, what was it about him that made you guys click and that attracted you
I
to
think
him?
the person he was. So I met Tony. So I was actually going to an elementary school on the other side of town,
It's
but
crazy.
my mother worked, so we but the school he went to, John Muir, we had extended day there. So they would keep us there at extended day. And I never forget, we always played, they were all, the boys were always playing kickball. And I was like a tomboy. And I went out there.
Yeah, you were an athlete
Yeah,
yourself, right? Like, I mean, you talked about your
yeah,
track field, but like you were a legit athlete in an era where it was
eh,
tough, especially for a
yeah.
woman to stand out, right? It wasn't like it was today.
So I went out there and I wanted to play kickball, and they were like, all the boys looked at me, no, no, you can't play. And then I'll never forget, he said, yeah, she could play, and he
Uh,
let me play kickball. And I always kind of admired him. But the funny part about it is, I would always see him and I would speak to him, and a lot of times I would tease him and say things that I shouldn't say to him. I won't go and get into that, but you know he told me, and I would always so he played the trombone in junior high. I played the cello. And every time
oh
I
wow,
look out my peripheral vision, I would see this guy. And later on, I found out, he said, I always liked you. I was following you. And the funny part about it, when we got into high school, I was always going to my track meet, and it was funny because he rode his bike to the track meet all the way to Milliken High School, which was way on the other side, and got his bike stolen, and he had to ride the bus with all the girls. Miss Barker, the coach, knew him, and she let him ride the bus. And he said, "I rode all the way over there to see you," and which I was unaware of, and so I teased him when he got on the bus. Oh, you got to ride the bus with us girls? Have a seat. Have a seat.
that's amazing.
and
That's
the,
amazing. I mean, what a story.
yeah,
What a
he said he
life.
followed me all the time. He said, I always liked you. And I said, God, it turned full circle. And, I had no idea at all. And I said, you got your bike stolen over me? Wow, what come to watch me? And so I would always
That love comes in
tease him
all
about
ways.
that. He said, I should have never told you the story.
And it's so crazy. I mean, life has a funny way of also like serving destiny. I mean, it's really phenomenal. I mean, you see how much transactions happen in sports for Long Beach,
Yep,
right? Growing up, high
yep.
school, going down a little bit south, SDSU, and then ending up with the Padres with no other teams. A lot of teams, even at the beginning of their career, they might start off, and even if they end up hometown, and then oftentimes ending their career in another city, right? Things happen. For you guys to make Southern California your home and for everything to happen there, what was that? I mean, that just it almost has to feel like destiny at a point,
Yeah,
right?
see, even when Tony had a chance to go, he would always say, you
Yeah.
know what, Leash? Who am I kidding? I'm not going anywhere. He said, you know what? These fans have been great to me. He said, I think it would be a slap in their face if I left them. He said, they've held me up the whole time. He said, even though they expect a lot, because when he started winning batting titles and then he didn't win it,
Yeah.
they wasn't too happy about it. He said, but you know what? They always stuck by me. And he said, I can't leave this city. He said it's really not about the money. He said it's about the passion, the love I have for the game, and the great fans I've had here in San Diego. So, and he said, fans, when I go to other cities and play, how they treat me. He said the respect they give me. Look, I remember the one time, I think he went at Chicago Cubs. We played the Cubs, and he went 5 for 5, and Boach took him out of the game, and that stadium erupted with a standing ovation. I thought that was one of the greatest moments of his career that
Yes.
I enjoyed. I was like, wow, because they're always in the outfield giving him the business. Fee, fi, fo,
Oh
fum,
yeah.
Tony Gwynn's a fat bum, and he would. I remember he would tip his hat off to him. But they always respected him, though. They respected him. They,
Yeah.
they were
You have
they
to.
they loved their team, and I feel like those were the good old days. Even though they give him the business, they gave him a lot of respect.
It's amazing. What a story. And you know what's so amazing too is the fact you documented and kept these keepsakes from high school on down. I mean, we've had junior high, maybe high school trophies. Obviously, a ton of things from SDSU, both pre
Hmm.
MLB, post MLB career,
Yep.
obviously, and a lot of early career milestones. I mean, it's truly phenomenal. We run into so many players, Hall of Famers, other legends that are like, love to do this. I don't have my stuff. There's one notable one that told me his stuff was in storage and it all got
Hmm.
stolen and he doesn't have
Hmm.
anything, right? Like others just are like, oh, I didn't think it was worth anything and didn't collect it. You kept such you kept everything in such impeccable records on it and details and the productization that you did of that. What made you do this back before memorabilia was really, I mean, it was, but nowhere near the level. And you had this vision. Walk us through that. And that's what's enabling us to bring these now to
You
the
know,
fans.
I always respected his career and I wanted to see the kids to see it while he's growing up. But, I remember, wanting to do a lot of things that wasn't even heard of at the time, when I'd save his stuff, and I remember I could I respect the guy who said his stuff got stolen because a lot of Tony's stuff in his younger days in minor leagues that I saved got taken, but it was he had such a passion for it, and I was so proud of him. I wanted to, for me, it meant more to me than it did to him. He would always say,
Yeah.
yeah, Alicia, but that's what I did before, and his thing was, it's all about what have you done for me lately. And he was not really into his awards, but he was proud when he did it for the moment, but that
Yeah.
moment
Yep.
passed for him. But I wanted to I just wanted I thought, wow, what a career this guy is having. And I thought, man, I need to save all this stuff. It was like I need to put away to let the kids see it. And they was proud of it, and I got to say this is what he did, and that it was that. And then they were like over it then afterward. Like, they,
Yep.
they even both Anisha and
Well,
Tony were like over it. Yeah, they were proud of it. They got a chance to uh honor it and adore it, but then it was like, okay, we over it now, Mom.
and that's a great segue, right? Like as to, people wondering why people sell things and why we do these auctions. And when we connected, it wasn't really just about money. It was about how do we preserve a legacy and
Mm-hmm.
storytell. And the fact of the matter is that you were there, and like as Tony said, like when these things happen, oftentimes the player's person, they don't care because they have the memories. And when we connected, you're like, look, we can only display so many
Mm-hmm.
items at your house. Tony has so many awards, so many items, and of course there's certain things that you're keeping. But for the most part, it's sitting in storage, collecting dust, rotting away where somebody can steal it. Where, I mean, we saw Universal's backlot catch on fire and all their
Mm-hmm.
archives
Mm-hmm.
gone, right? Why at a certain point it becomes why hold these things? And also to his fans that are so
Mm-hmm.
passionate, to be able to give them not only something that is more meaningful to them,
Mm-hmm.
strangely because it reflects something than it would ever be to you and the family,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it empowers them to tell stories and keep the legacy
Yeah.
alive, right? Like it's been 10 years since
Mm-hmm.
Tony passed, and now there's a generation that will never, obviously have never seen him play, but his story like lives on through these treasures. And by getting them in the hands of people that are going to
Mm-hmm.
preserve them and display them proudly versus sitting in a storage unit where all this risk is, and the memories will never go away for you, I think was really resonating for me, and why we dove in here at the Realist. And our thing is, we always say we're
Mm-hmm.
storytellers. We storytell through
Mm-hmm.
items, but we want to preserve legacy. Maybe talk a minute about how you look at this, like living in this world. You've
Mm-hmm.
lived like all of these moments, you know what it is. You don't need to see them. And
Nope.
you end up like, I mean, I know me as a big sneaker collector, I had 2,000
Mm-hmm.
pairs at one point. It becomes a burden. You don't want to deal
It
with it. You don't forget about it,
absolutely.
right? Like,
But you know what? You
so
keep
that
it
was
in your
my,
heart. What
yeah,
really helped me to really let go is when Tony the third and I took him to see all the stuff that
yeah,
he was like, I really wish that I got to meet Papa. But he said he started reading and asking me about the gold gloves and stuff, but he remembered it inside. He could sat to you what Papa did even though he never got a chance to meet him, but it's
Yeah.
in his heart. And so that helped me,
Yeah.
and that's where I carry it in my heart, carrying on his legacy. And I remember I took a picture of each silverback, each of the awards, and I made a T-shirt
Yeah.
out of each of the awards. I had to shrink the bats, I had to shrink the silver sluggers, but and he was asking Gigi, what you did to that shirt, those shirts? I said, I have no idea. We have, and everything's so accumulating. It was like, okay, this is
Yeah.
making
It becomes
it
overwhelming.
is it. I would every time I went into the storage and okay, I'm going to start sorting things out. I just got overwhelmed. I could, and I said, you know what?
Yeah.
Now it's time for me to let go because I carry what he did in my heart, and it's about continuing the legacy afterwards too, and that's what I intend to do. And then thank God for Realest. You guys came in, we
We
partnered up with
appreciate it.
me, and like the great ideas that you have, the great ideas I have, we work together. We come up with continuing this legacy, as long as my lifetime, so that's the greatest part
Oh,
about
we're
it.
here. We're here, and then for us, like I mean, like, look, I'm a storyteller at the core, and a diehard baseball fan, right? I thought I was going to be a pro baseball player. Unfortunately, wasn't as good and didn't study as enough as Tony, so didn't make it there. But I, was able to pass my, carve my own path. But like, it's what's always so rewarding to me is hearing the stories is when people buy these
Hmm.
items, right? And whether it's a high end item, and we like one key thing for us is of course we want to set records, right? Like by doing that we think that like shows the impact that somebody like Tony has, but we also want things that are affordable, right? That everybody can, like, there's a lot of fans, not everybody can
And that
afford
matters.
the high
That
end.
matters. It really does
100%,
matter.
right?
And I
Because we could, like, as a kid I couldn't afford these things, but there was something we wanted to have, something for everybody, and you've done such a good job of even like creating these like signed baseballs, right? With the different one for every
yep,
hit actually signed by
yep.
Tony, right? But with the milestone on it, like this one is hit number 1328, 9389 versus Philly. And these are things that are like, if you're a fan, you can generally
Yep,
get.
and I remember we decided to do that. And speaking of people being able to afford it, at that time Tony was like, I said, what can we do where every fan could afford it? And then I said, you know what? You should do we'll do these hitting balls. So I had an example of make these balls,
Yeah.
the hitter, the pitcher, what number it was. And he goes, look at it, Lee, you really want me to sign 3,000 balls? I said, yep, you just said you want a fan to be able to afford every piece of history. I said, why not do the commemorative ball sets? And, we started doing it. And I remember him signing all those
They're
balls
so cool.
sitting in the living room on his chair, and I'm,
How long did that take?
he's a,
He had a lot of
but
hits.
he's a good, he's fast. Tony always has a system. He would set, before he starts signing, he would set this, he would have a system, how he wanted the balls to go and stuff. So he always had a system. I think it took us about a week to finish everything.
Still a long time. It takes a
Mhm.
long time, and he has a great signature.
He
Another fun
does.
thing I want to bring up, that one reason we wanted to work together too, because Vanika and co-founder helped work, with MLB and their authentication
Hmm.
program,
Hmm.
which we interestingly learned out. And again, the way the world works, we talked about already San Diego, right? On this end of the spectrum, the fact that we like built this business because there's just too much fraud and you never know, and most of these items don't come from the source.
Hmm.
Um, Baseball started this program after a player I heard recognized a signature in the San Diego Padres team store that was not
Yep.
his actual signature that was being sold to the fans. Tell us
I will
about that.
never forget that because, and he had the keen eye. He had a great, good hand-eye coordination. And I remember even when Tony was sick, and how we get older, we lose our
Mhm.
vision. He didn't. And of course, I was getting old. I'm a little older than Tony, and I would say I can't see that. He said, Leash, you really can't see that. I said, no, Tony, I can't see it. Everybody's not gifted like you, okay? So no, I can't see it. I need some glasses, And I'll never forget, he I remember a fan brought that up too. Hey Tony, I got this. He had, let's see. it was a bat. And he said, that ain't my signature. And he said, yes, it is. He said, it may look like it from afar. He said, but I tell you, he said, see this stroke right here? I don't do that. And he recognized his
Wow.
signatures. He said, somebody over here fooling you. And I remember Tony said, you know what? Since you went through all that and paid that, he said, I'm gonna sign this right in front of you and give you this back. Okay.
Uh,
So, and he said, now give me this so I could take this and show the people. And that's when it all started, that it was fraud. But he felt so bad for the fan because he was so happy that he got
yeah.
a signature. Tony's like, that's not mine. And Tony had one of the bat boys go get a bat, and so he could sign in front of him.
Uh,
And
it's amazing. I mean, it shows the person he is, but also it shows, again, the reason we built this company, and we spend a lot on our authentication process on building the
right.
best, right? Because
Hmm.
certificates of authentication, all these other methods, you'll see different like RFID and FC chips. They're just not enough. And unless you're there, it's really a letter of opinion.
Hmm. Hmm.
And for us, rather
Well, the
than,
greatest thing, you guys came to the storage and got the stuff, so you
yeah,
knew it was my stuff.
exactly. And that's
I
part of our
I think
value
you
is that
guys
we
were
don't
a little
take,
over. You guys were a little overwhelmed too, because when I
we
said I
brought,
had stuff, you
oh,
didn't
not only
know
two
that
things.
I
So
had
like
stuff.
one, yes, and again, we only will take it from the source. So if other like all
Mm,
these people, and we turn down a lot of money, right? Like we make a
mm,
business on working with people like you to keep our brand higher, which is why we deliver, we believe, bigger results and storytelling that. But because people know we're not about taking every dollar, and we also want to take everything. And I remember not only were we like blown away, and we've seen a lot in our days,
mm,
Alicia, but we brought down Michael Osaki, the probably preeminent best baseball appraiser
mm,
in the world, right? Like
mm.
this is what he goes to. He's a good. He was overwhelmed. He was like, I can't believe this. We didn't even know where to start. We've gotten
I
through it.
remember
And
he said you saying all this stuff. I said, yeah. And I said, but you know what? I say so much stuff. I said, when I walk in here, I am overwhelmed. I
yeah,
am truly overwhelmed because this is a lot. But then I also am proud of what he did. And I was
yeah,
like, this is what my guy did. And even though, and he's in and even little Tony, he got overwhelmed. He's like, Mom, but you need to let some of this stuff go because this is a lot of stuff, Mom. And
yeah,
he said, every time you move, you gotta watch this, you gotta move this, you gotta move that. He said, free yourself, Mom, just free yourself. And he said,
yeah.
there's a lot of people out there that love Dad, that would love to have some of this stuff, Mom. I said, yeah, you're right. And I said, yeah, I said, and you know, it's like you're getting older. I want to enjoy my grandkids. But at the same time, I want to carry on his legacy,
Yeah.
and I feel like those that were really true fans of him could help carry on the legacy.
100%. We see it. I
Mm,
mean, we're seeing even places like Bullpen and out here in LA winning items, right, to display in
mm,
the store and tell others about it. And that's what
mm,
excites us about this. I mean, I mean, even in my small career, right, on the music side, I've started letting go of things because I don't care. I was there. I don't need it. It takes up, it's a pain when you try to move and store it. I'm not looking at anything of myself, right? Like,
it-
so I think getting these out to people that actually appreciate it, right, like is something
mm,
that's so important. And this is how you build legacy and carry it on. And the way that we work, right? We know where things are, so we can always track down who that is and see how they have
yeah,
it and do stuff
you,
in a fun way.
yeah. I got a story to tell you. During the fires, and I can't
Yeah,
remember back in 2000 about the fires. We had to evacuate, and I remember his name was the Malkowitz family. They were into mattresses, making mattresses and stuff like that. And when they knew we had to evacuate, they lived in Escondido. They pulled up a semi and said, "We want to help Tony his stuff, get his stuff." So Tony looked at them. He said, "We ain't taking that stuff. That's just stuff." He
oh
said, if it burned out, he said, hey, I remember what I did. And they looked at him, they couldn't believe it that he
yeah,
did not want to. He said, it's about my life. He said, it ain't about this stuff. He said, we ain't taking this stuff nowhere. This stuff gonna stay here, you know. And you know, I that's what I most respected with him. And I'm looking at it. He said, "Hey, Leash, I remember what I did." He said,
Yeah.
"These fans know what I did." He said, "I'm not taking that stuff with me." He said, "Ain't no way I'm gonna pack all this stuff up." He said, "Nope." And so
It's
we
meant to
left
be.
that stuff there. Came back, it was still there. So
It's
had a lot of soot,
insane.
you know, in the from the fires, but he was like, "Nope, we're not taking that."
Amazing. Wow. So many things. I mean, so many crazy memories. And it's amazing like looking at these and hearing the stories and finding some of the fans that go and track down and know every moment behind a picture, right? They're like,
Hmm.
this was taken on this day by this photographer after this moment. And this is like, and it means the world to them, right? There's some
Hmm.
fans building like their own museums that they hope to showcase. Like it's really, really, it's got to feel great to see this much demand and to see the impact that Tony has on people still here in 2025.
Yep. Hmm. Hmm.
It's really amazing. But for you, I know we've spent way too much time. I appreciate
It's
you
okay.
telling us these incredible stories.
No
A
problem.
couple things too. I want to go through a couple items, right? Like one thing, we centered a lot around like our in all of our auctions around. I personally just love the '94 season because I hated it as a kid because it was a strike riddle season and I was in my prime of watching baseball and I got robbed of a season where I always like to say in the 162 games, August to May, August 93, May of 95, there's 162 games, 406, right?
Mhm.
What was your memories of the 1994 season? By the way,
Oh,
still into the season 394.
yeah.
So
That
like,
man was in a zone. If that season is finished, I know that he would have hit 400. He was in a zone. He was locked in. It was kind of one of the happiest times. And like, it was like, because he was so confident, he said, "Oh no, I know I'm gonna get a hit." He knew when he was good. It was just like incredible. He was on a roll, you know, and it was like nothing could stop him. Nothing could
is there
stop him.
anything different he did that season in preparation? Like you said he was locked in. What was it? Was it just the magic of that time?
It was the magic at that time, but I remember he did a little bit more studying. You know,
Mm,
that's when he started seeing the picture. He said, "I could see the stitches on the ball." Like that's how incredible he was. You know, and he knew when a pitcher tipped his their pitches too. Like I was like, he said, because he's tipping his pitches. You know, like, and so
wow.
he was on it. Like, but he was locked in, that hand-eye coordination was working like it was on, like, it was like he couldn't be stopped.
Just incredible. What were
Even when he made it out, the ball was hit well. His mechanics was great, like everything was, he was locked in.
what was he a biggest fan of? Like, what was there an accomplishment that he was more proud of than others? And it could have even been like, was it when he hit a home run, a grand slam? Was it when going 5 for 5, winning a Gold Glove? What kind of achievements really did made him proud? Even if it was, it could have been even something smaller.
When he hit that home run at Yankee Stadium in the playoffs.
Did he
I
like hitting
mean,
home runs? Was that? I mean, everybody does, but like he was, he didn't try. He wasn't like a pure power hitter. He hit
mhm.
home runs, and then that came, but was that it never seemed to be like that big of a
he
focus for him.
that wasn't his game,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he could have hit more home runs because Tony could turn on the ball in a minute,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and when Ted Williams told him that, did you turn on the ball in a minute, he was like looking at Ted, yeah, really. And then I remember he said, "You know what, Leash, he's really right." He said, "But I ain't gonna let him know." He's right, and but I remember after that he hit, I think he hit 16 home runs that year after talking to Ted. But that was his game. That wasn't his game, and he grew up learning his game, playing within himself, and so but he was most proud of that, hitting that uh home run at Yankee Stadium, because he was so proud to take little Tony, because he hadn't seen the and see the history, tour the history of Yankee Stadium. So he was really
Oh, that's
he was
awesome.
proud of that. Hmm.
I mean, so many cool things. I mean, we look at moments like So this is just a signed Hall of Fame bat, right? What did it mean
Yep.
for him to get inducted into to the Hall of Fame in
Oh,
2007?
let me tell you, that man bugged me and stayed up the whole night because he said, "You think I'll get in?" He said, "I probably won't get in, but I get in. Like I know I'll get in sometime." You know, he said, I'm punching Judy hitter, so you know, they don't have no punching Judy hitters in the Hall of Fame, and we're like looking at him like, I mean, he pestered. He was the most nervous person ever. And he said, I ain't going to get a call, Leash. I ain't going to get a call. But if I don't get a call, it's okay, you know. But, you know, I mean, I said, could you please go to sleep? Because I really want to get some sleep. Like, oh my God, he stayed up through, you know, when he got up and the phone didn't ring. I probably won't get a call, Leash. But it's okay. He said, I might get it. And I said, why do you keep saying this? Because I'm a punch and Judy hitter. There ain't no punch and Judy hitters in the Hall of Fame. It's like, okay, Tony, whatever. Okay.
It's funny, but you know why? Because it's the one thing he couldn't control, right? He couldn't prep for
Mm-mm.
that or plan for it at that point, right? Like he'd already
Nope.
done that. We all
Yep.
like, I mean, I don't think there was any doubt in anybody's mind, right? Like that he was
Only in
making it in
his.
first.
Only
Yeah,
in his.
exactly, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible. Looking at other things, right? There's so many cool mementos that you've designed. We talked about the 3000 hit ball. You've made recreations of bats and things. I mean, I love even like these mini gloves. There's just so many cool items within this. Of
Mm-hmm.
the items that, and we've got some more things to come that people will get ready
Mm-hmm.
for. What's been the funnest project for you to work on as it relates to Tony's memorabilia?
I think the gift ball sets, the hitting with the
So cool.
balls, you know, those were it meant a lot to me, you know, because it was a creation that I came up with, you know, and
Yeah.
nobody has done it, you know. So
You
that
were
I was
early. You were early in this entire
oh, I was
memorabilia
way
game
ahead of
from
my
us,
time,
even
way
just
ahead of my time.
collecting, but then manufacturing, making products, coming with like this is as good as some anything else. This is better than most things that you'll see when you look at
Yeah,
like and the fact that there's one for each hit, right? And they're all
yeah,
signed by Tony and has such a good signature on it. Like
mm,
just an incredible product
mm,
that
mm,
you brought to life. So
yeah,
we're grateful to have people like you that we work with. So
yep. And I'm
I
great
know.
to. It's been a pleasure working with the realist too. You know.
I appreciate it, Alicia.
Mm,
It's been the
mm.
best. Well, anyways, you're the best. We're excited to keep it going, right? I think this is gonna be our final one of the year.
Yep.
More things to come, and it's gonna be a fun time. And by the way, Padres doing all right. Looks like they're gonna make the playoffs. Like the time again, the timing is all aligned.
Yeah.
You think they're gonna? How far do you think they're gonna go this year?
Uh, you know what? It depends on them. You know.
Yeah,
They're all in the right frame of mind, working together. They got the teamwork going on. So when
yeah.
you have the teamwork, you know you have more success when everybody's in one on sync. So you know I'm looking forward to them going a little further than they. Hopefully they'll make it to the World Series. You know,
Who would
but
who would Tony of the players right now, in your estimation, who would have been his probably favorite from that? Because you have an eclectic mix.
Manny Machado, because he told me when Manny came up in Baltimore, he said, "Ooh, leash, he can get hit." He said, "That bat he got right there."
Yeah,
He said, "You see that bat? He drive through the zone like that." He would told me that Manny Machado was gonna be a star. He said he gonna be good, leash. He gonna be real good. Yep, I never
there we
forget
go.
that. Hmm.
It's a great way to end it in September. Tony Gwynn, Alicia Gwynn, the realist, and we'll see what happens in the postseason. Thank you so much for your time and
You're
for
welcome.
showcasing these and telling us the incredible stories and letting the world own a piece of the history that is so valuable to them. I know, speaking not only on our behalf, but everybody else is just so gracious for not only getting these out there, being able to see them for even for all of the people like. Not many people can afford some of these items, but we all get to see them and experience them. We try to take incredible images. So even if you don't win them, go check it out on the site. It's almost like a museum style gallery that
Yeah.
lasts forever. So I just am a fan and honored to be in the presence. So thank you
Yeah,
again,
my
Alicia.
pleasure. You're welcome. My pleasure.
And take care.